They're ready? Please join me in welcoming Secretary Rubio, Foreign Minister Wagner, and Foreign Minister Nduhungirehe. Secretary Rubio, Foreign Minister Wagner, Foreign Minister Nduhungirehe, Minister of State Al-Khulaifi, African Union Chairperson Yusuf, Foreign Minister Ducey, ambassadors, members of Congress, distinguished guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining for the historic signing of a comprehensive peace agreement between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the Republic of Rwanda. In a moment, Secretary Rubio and the foreign ministers of the DRC and Rwanda will sign an agreement that builds on the Declaration of Principles signed here on April 25th. With their signatures, the peace agreement will enter into force, bringing an end to a 30-year conflict and setting both countries and their people on a path towards peace and prosperity. This would not be possible without the leadership and vision of President Trump. He has made peace a priority of his administration, and we have taken up his call to find a peaceful resolution to this conflict. I would like to recognize the tireless work that both foreign ministers and their teams put into reaching this agreement. I would also like to recognize the partnership from the government of Qatar, who is driving towards a parallel agreement between the government of the DRC and the M23 armed group. In addition, I would like to acknowledge that the work done under the auspices of the African Union was critical for reaching this agreement. We look forward to coordinating with the AU chairperson and Togolese president, who is serving as the AU facilitator, to ensure implementation of the agreement. Finally, I would like to recognize the team here at the Department of State who facilitated the discussions and helped guide both sides towards this agreement. I will now turn to Secretary Rubio for opening remarks.
Thank you, and I'm honored all of you are here today. I'm honored to be joined by my counterparts from the Democratic Republic of Congo and from Rwanda, and the hard work you both put in to make this happen. This was not easy. And there's still work to be done, obviously, in terms of implementation, but we're very honored you're both here, and it's been an honor to work with both of you. We have a lot of people to thank. Obviously, the great team here at the Department of State who did a great job, Mr. Boulos, who did a phenomenal job. He's been on the job now about 10 weeks, and he's jumped all over this and really worked it hard, and you did a great job, and we are grateful to you for all of your work. Obviously, this could not have happened without such close friends and partners in the African Union and in Qatar, who we're working a lot lately with Qatar. We're doing a lot of things with you guys, and you've been very instrumental in the African Union. Without you, this couldn't have happened. I mean, you may put everybody together. I do want to recognize my what I say, former colleagues. It wasn't 6 months ago. I was still a senator, but they're here now, Senators Rounds and Risch. Senator Risch is the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee and a very close friend of mine, and he's obviously watched this issue very closely. He's made it a priority. And Senator Rounds, who's been talking to me about this before I was even nominated to the position and even during the nomination process. And we have others who are not able to make it today that I also want to recognize, Senator Coons and Booker. There's been a lot of interest in this, and we're grateful to all of them. They were invited, but I guess, you know, there's stuff going on in the Senate, as you know. And but we're grateful that both of you are here, and it's instrumental. This is, you know, an important moment after 30 years of war. President Trump is a president of peace. He really does want peace. He prioritizes it above all else. We saw his intervention in the conflict between India and Pakistan. We saw his intervention most recently as a few days ago in a very dangerous war, right? A very dangerous war that could have really spiraled out of control, and his intervention made that possible. And there are other places that we want to see this, but we're very excited about this, and we can't wait to have the heads of state, the presidents of the respective countries here in Washington in a few weeks to finalize the complete protocol and agreement. But today is an important step in that direction, and we're grateful to be able to host it here at the Department of State. And just thinking, we think sometimes about peace. It's not just about ending wars. It's not just about saving lives. It's about allowing people to live. It's about allowing people to now have dreams and hopes for a better life, for prosperity, for economic opportunity, for family reunification, for all the things that make life worth living. Those things become impossible when there's war and when there's conflict. So we're grateful to have played the role we've played. We acknowledge and recognize there's still more work to be done. But we thank you all very much for being a part of this historic and important day. This is really why I wanted this job, or why I embraced this job so much, is moments like this. This is, in essence, the Department of State is really the Department of Peace. It's designed to bring people together, both in our relations with other countries, but to the extent we can use the stature and the influence of the United States to bring others together. It makes the world a better place. And I honestly believe that when there's peace in the world among friends who may have disagreements and conflict, it does help America. It does help make America stronger and safer and more prosperous. It gives us partners we can do business with. And partners that we can work with to address insecurity and threats to our national security and to our collective national security. So we are grateful to both of you. I know how hard this was and how much work went into it, and we know there's more work to be done. But we are grateful to have you here today. We're honored to be a part of this. We're excited to be a part of it. And again, I do want to thank everyone here in our Africa Bureau and at the Department of State. And once again, our superstar there, Mr. Boulos. What do you want to do next after you're done with this? Sudan. Yeah, very important. Actually, very, very important. And you're very involved in that as well. So what are you guys doing this week in Qatar? You guys want to work a little? We are grateful to all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I now turn to the Foreign Minister of Rwanda for remarks.
Thank you. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Minister Therese Wagner, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mahmoud Yusuf, Minister of State Mohamed Ali Khulaifi of Qatar, my colleague, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Togo, Robert Dussey, senators, dear colleagues, good afternoon. Let me begin by expressing our sincere appreciation to President Donald Trump for his personal engagement in facilitating this historic agreement. We also extend our gratitude to the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, Special Advisor Masad Boulos, and the entire State Department team. Your dedication has been indispensable. This agreement is the product of months of coordinated efforts by multiple actors. It is very important to note that the state of Qatar has played an absolutely central role. Indeed, the opening, which led to today's agreement, began in Doha. We will lend our full support in the weeks ahead to Qatar's mediation efforts, led by Minister of State Mohamed Al Khulaifi, to secure a peace agreement between the DRC government and the AFC M23. This process is already well underway. Today's agreement also builds on the African-led peace initiatives, which are ably led by the African Union facilitator, President Faure Gnassingbé of Togo. The heart of this peace agreement is the decision to establish a standing joint security coordination mechanism between DRC and Rwanda. The first order of business is to begin implementing of the concept of operations for the neutralization of the FDLR, to be accompanied by a lifting of Rwanda's defensive measures. This is grounded in the commitment made here for an irreversible and verifiable end to state support for FDLR and associated militias. That is the bedrock of peace and security in our region. FDLR is no ordinary militia. It is the remnant of the forces which committed the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994, in which 1 million people were killed. With this agreement, we also committed to facilitate the return of refugees in our respective territories with the support of the UNHCR. Creating the conditions for the safe and dignified return of refugees is vital to achieve lasting peace. We also took to enhanced economic cooperation, including with American companies and investors. Shared growth and cross-border cooperation will unlock tangible dividends for both our countries. We must acknowledge that there is a great deal of uncertainty in our region and beyond, because many previous agreements have not been implemented, and there is no doubt that the road ahead will not be easy. But with the continued support of the United States and other partners, we believe that a turning point has been reached. Rwanda stands ready to work with the DRC to deliver on our joint commitments. To conclude, allow me to once again express Rwanda's appreciation to all who have contributed to this milestone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I now turn to the Foreign Minister of the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Mr. Secretary of State, the Honorable Senator Marco Rubio, Dr. Massad Boulos, Senior Advisor for African Affairs, His Excellency Mr. Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Mr. Olivier Nduhungirehe, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Rwanda, His Excellency Dr. Mohamed bin Abdulaziz Khelaifi, Minister of State at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the State of Qatar, His Excellency Mr. Robert Dussé, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Togo, Senators, Excellencies, distinguished guests, and to all Congolese citizens following this movement, wherever you may be. 2 months ago in this very room, we signed a Declaration of Principles, a first tangible step to break with deadlock and chart a path towards peace. Today, that choice takes shape and sustained efforts have come to fruition. With this peace agreement, we open a new chapter, one that calls not only for commitment, but for the courage to see it through. By signing this agreement, we reaffirm a simple truth. Peace is a choice, but also responsibility, to respect international law, to uphold human rights, and to protect the sovereignty of states. Those who have suffered the most are watching. They are expecting this agreement to be respected, and we cannot fail them. This agreement builds on the efforts of many. First and foremost, we want to express our sincere gratitude to His Excellency President Donald J. Trump for his commitment to this peace process. His leadership kept this process focused and goal-oriented, and that from day one.
The entire country of Canada. They could quite easily just swamp our market with cheap milk and knock out Canadian producers. Donald Trump negotiated that specific clause that he's upset about today. So, you know, we're into the hard stuff. And I come back to take a breath, see where this goes. There's every reason to think it is going to be just as volatile as the last time, perhaps even more so. But there's also every reason to think they are carving out the path towards a deal. And until we know more, it's probably in our best interest to watch fascinatingly, but to watch what happens.
The issue with the watch, fascinatingly, and the kind
Easy for me to say, right?
Exactly, exactly. So the issue becomes, we just saw the Prime Minister getting into a vehicle, very brief comment from him, we continue our negotiations, maybe strategically with the Trump administration, that's the smartest path forward. But for a country on the edge, worried about its economy, worried about trade, it's deeply unsatisfying, because you want a response that is equal to what the threat is. Well, you tell me, what do you think?
I don't know that you do. I don't think you want to out Donald Trump. I don't think you want to get into a social media posting war with Donald Trump.
No, but we do have a Prime Minister who has said the relationship has fundamentally changed forever. We will meet might with might. We will stand up for our country. We will not be bullied. We are not up for sale. So that rhetoric is up there for this Prime prime minister.
And in that time, he has seen the effective national tariff rate drop from 25% to somewhere between 2 and 6%. In that time, we've been able to make sure that 90% of Canadian products that go into the United States go into duty-free. And he has done that quietly. They have done that quietly. I don't think it's just him. It is a terrifying time. Like, imagine the big companies have bigger margins. They can sort of, you know, they can eat a little bit more loss. They can sustain things. They can exist over a 10-year period. Small companies, parts suppliers and shippers and you know, the truck drivers that rely on steady flow of trade to drive their truck. Most common job among Canadian men in this country is driving a truck. Those are the ones who have every right to be worried, and they might sit watching us on television right now and say, that smug dude from the CBC is saying, take a breath, we'll see if it'll be okay. And I get it. They're terrified, and they should be. It's a really scary time. That said, I do think we have learned a lot from the 2016 renegotiations of NAFTA. We learned a lot through the 2018-19 reimposition of steel and aluminum tariffs, the end of that led to the final ratification of NAFTA, and we've learned a lot in these last 8 months, 9 months of rhetoric leading up to this point. And I think the thing we've learned most is reacting rashly in the minute doesn't really get you anywhere. And I think it's important. You know, the thing I glommed onto out of Mark Carney was him saying negotiations are ongoing. And I'm certainly not going to dispute the President of the United States when he puts something up on social media. But when he says we have terminated talks, and the Prime Minister says negotiations are ongoing, that to me is a really interesting and important difference and distinction in where we're at. And I think these next 24 hours, maybe even a couple of hours, will pin down how close that gap is. Is Donald Trump right? Is Mark Carney right? Are they both a little right? Who knows? But, you know, we get more information as it comes in, and we'll react to it as it comes.
Good analysis. Peter Armstrong, Senior Business Correspondent. Thanks so much for being here.
You bet.
All right. This is our top story, so let's stick with it and get further analysis now from Moshe Lander. He's a Senior Lecturer of Economics at Concordia University, and today we've reached him in London, Ontario. Moshe, very good to get you on the show. Thanks for making some time.
Smug dude number 2, right behind Peter, huh?
All right. I don't know if Peter heard that, but smug dude number 2 is on the air. So why so smug, chum? What is your assessment of what's happening right now?
I think Peter got the main points right there. It's part of the negotiations. Remember that Trump fashions himself as the great negotiator, right? He loves the art of the deal. He loves tariffs. And he loves keeping people on their toes. I'm not going to give him any credit for what he's doing. This is not good for Canada. It's not good for the U.S. But this is a tax that was given royal assent 12 months ago. So it's impossible to think that he's just hearing about it now. I know he might be slow on the uptake at times, but it's impossible that the people around him didn't realize this tax exists. So this is probably being lobbed out there more for his base and his constituents than it is really as something that he's absolutely concerned about. I think it's just part of the negotiation. And if he's going to come back at Canada with this, then Canada now needs to come up with something to hand him so that he can have his victory.
So then, okay, so play that out for me. What does Canada need to do?
I don't know. You know, I think it was Mark Twain who said, never argue with an idiot because they'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. Like, I don't pretend to know what exactly is behind what he's trying to do. And I don't pretend to understand why he's so opposed to trade. I mean, it's generally accepted among economists that free trade is the best option out there and that tariffs are usually counterproductive, not just for the country that's being tariffed, but for the one that's tariffing. So it clearly can't be good for the overall U.S. economy. It's obvious that he has some constituents that he wants to protect, that he feels he needs their support. But in this particular case, it's the technology companies that in theory would benefit from the removal of this tax. And you really haven't been hearing anything out of them recently. In fact, they seem to be distancing themselves from him. So I think it's merely just something that he is upset about, and maybe there's something broader that he wants or something else that he's eyeing, and he's just going to use this as something to slide across the table and say, give me what I want and I'll get rid of this, which I really never wanted in the first place.
Can I read you a bit of information that's coming from the CCIA on, they're calling for the United States to investigate Canada's digital tax. So they're saying beginning Monday, June 30th, Canada's digital services tax will take effect, requiring affected companies, predominantly leading U.S. technology firms, to pay up to $3 billion in payments, including retroactive charges dating back to 2022. That's been established. That's how that would work. In the absence of a clear path to a negotiated solution, the Computer and Communications Industry Association is calling on the U.S. Trade Representative to open a 301 investigation as a first step in resolving this trade dispute with Canada. This is not people taking a breath. This is not people calming down. This is people amping up the situation, at least on the U.S. side. Now they're saying, we need to investigate this. Maybe there is legal action to be taken here. So what's your analysis of how this is ramping up in the U.S.?
Or maybe it's let's just look into it to make sure that we say we've looked into it and keep everybody happy. I mean, you know, again, it's not a new tax. Yes, it's a new tax that comes into effect next week, but it's not a new tax that was just passed in this most recent parliament. It was passed by the previous government. And so, again, he's been in power when he knew this tax was coming. So he can't be broadsided by it. And when they did meet in Kananaskis, it's entirely possible that this was a conversation point as part of the 30-day negotiation that Carney outlined. This could be, hey, I want you to take a look at this. I want you to do something about this, or I'm going to even do this as part of a broader deal. But again, it's not that it was passed in the last week. So I think that if the CCIA is saying, hey, we want to look into it, look at the number that you quoted. It's a small number when you're talking about a U.S. economy that runs into the tens of trillions. And even a smaller economy like Canada still runs into the trillions of dollars. So the amount of money that they're talking about is significant to you and me. It's a sizable amount of money, but to that industry that trades in trillion-dollar market valuations, I don't think that this is going to move the needle in any significant way that they're worried. And it's not like there's Canadian competitors that they have to worry about. So there's a tax on Netflix, big deal. What's the Canadian company that you're going to use instead of Netflix? I think there's only so much Crave that can go around to compete with all of those U.S. platforms.
So let's talk about how the Canadian government should respond. We saw Prime Minister Mark Carney a short while ago. He was getting into a vehicle. So we just had a few seconds to catch him, and our colleague David Thurton in Ottawa was able to ask him about the president. He said he hasn't spoken to the president today, but he did emphasize that negotiations are continuing. And as my colleague Peter Armstrong was saying, that's interesting because the president is saying communications shut, negotiations done, effective immediately, and our Prime Minister says they're ongoing. So as a layperson or as a Canadian or someone who owns a business who's really quite worried right now, what are we to believe?
Let's not forget that these negotiations do not take place between the president and the prime minister. It's a whole bunch of civil servants that are negotiating with each other, and then all they're doing is trying to find some sort of document that they can pass up to their political superiors. So even if Trump is saying, we're not talking anymore, that just might mean that he's not going to take Mark Carney's phone call. And Mark Carney might say negotiations are still ongoing because civil servants are still talking to civil servants. Don't forget as well that we're heading into a long weekend. The U.S. is heading into a long weekend as well. So it's entirely possible that we're not going to be communicating over the next week because everybody's going on vacation. So I think that Peter's point earlier, which is everybody needs to take a deep breath, is probably true, at least for the next couple of weeks until we get a better feel for what's actually going on. Because the story is just breaking right now, I think that all sides are probably telling some form of the truth. We just might not have the complete picture as to what exactly Trump means when he says we're completely done, and when Mark Carney is saying, no, we're still talking.
Okay, we'll continue to watch. Moshe Lander, Senior Lecturer of Economics at Concordia University. Thanks so much for your time, Moshe.
Anytime.
And we continue to keep our eye on Washington. We are expecting to hear from President Donald Trump at a meeting with foreign ministers of Rwanda and Congo. But the real thing we're waiting for now is an update on what the president has been posting about in terms of breaking off trade talks with Canada. We're watching the scene in D.C., and we'll take you there live as soon as Trump starts speaking. Of course, we'll keep an eye on Ottawa as well to see if any more federal ministers have anything to say. You're watching CBC News Network.
President Trump says he's ending trade talks with Canada, and he's expected to announce a new tariff rate on the country in the days ahead. Now, Mr. Trump took to Truth Social to make the announcement, saying in part, quote, "We have just been informed that Canada, a very difficult country to trade with, including the fact they have charged our farmers as much as 400% tariffs for years on dairy products, has just announced that they are putting a digital services tax on our American technology companies, which is a direct and blatant attack on our country." He goes on to say, "Based on the egregious tax, we are hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada effective immediately." For more on this, I want to bring in White House reporter Aaron Navarro. Okay, so break this down for us. I mean, I know that this is breaking for you too. What more do we know right now?
Kelly, it really seems that it is that digital services tax from Canada, so taxes that are applied to American tech companies such as Amazon, such as Google, that really caught the ire of President Trump and lead him to say that they're terminating all discussions on trade with Canada effective immediately. In that post, he says that Canada is, quote, copying the European Union, who has also been considering this digital services tax on American companies should trade talks with the Trump administration go sour. This is all incredibly interesting, just given that Trump was just in Alberta, Canada, for that G7 meeting, had only praise to show the new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, in the planning of that meeting. But the fact that he is saying that he might just give a letter establishing the tariff rate for Canada, that thought is not necessarily that new. When President Trump has been asked about this incoming July 9th deadline for his tariff plans, he's often said, you know, we can just make the deal whenever and set the tariff rates for these countries. We could send a letter to them saying that this is the tariff rate you have to pay if you want to do business with the United States. It just seems that now that Canada could be the first one to get one of those types of letters.
I think it's important that you bring up the European Union point because, you know, for those watching at home, one of the things that the president has really been frustrated with them, of course, is how hard they are on American tech companies, as you've mentioned, making it hard to do business, going after them with fines for antitrust issues. And we do know that it's not just about trade when it comes to doing these deals, whether it be with Canada, with the EU and other nations. It's also about protecting American business interests. So let's kind of play this out. We have seen a lot of back and forth when it comes to these trade policies and the trade deals. But if we were to go ahead with this unknown tariff rate that will be announced in a few days, what kind of implications do you think that would have on our relationship with the northern border?
Yeah, well, certainly, if you just look at the dynamic between the president and Canada in just the past couple of weeks, there have been these flashpoints where there have been points where Canada has said that they will have retaliatory tariffs on some of our tariffs on steel and aluminum. So this relationship, which is relatively new between the new Prime Minister and President Trump, was already somewhat on shaky ground. In fact, I remember hearing Prime Minister Carney not sounding that optimistic after his meeting here at the White House when it comes to the overall trade deal with the United States. And when you've heard the White House talk about their deals with countries, they mention obviously the one that they inked with the United Kingdom, the new one that we're learning a bit more about with China. They point to South Korea, India, Japan. They do not point necessarily to Canada. We have not heard a lot of talk from them talking about deals either with Mexico, our neighbors down south. So this is just a continuation, potentially a more frayed relationship between the U.S. and Canada, especially if there's no other developments or any types of negotiations before the president issues that letter telling Canada, this is what you have to pay us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you kind of brought up the history of all of this because you and I have talked so many different times, you know, especially about Canada, right? There was all of that back and forth with Ottawa, and there was going to be a tax on electricity, and then days later, you know, they were going to retaliate against us, and then all of a sudden, a couple days later, oh, actually, we figured it out, things are okay. So based on your reading of all of the history of this back and forth, I mean, do you think that this could be a negotiation tactic?
Oh, it could be, especially because Trump seems to be really honed in on that digital services tax. That was announced. That was something that Canadian officials in the past couple of weeks have been teasing could happen. Should Canada remove that, you could see the president say, all right, let's come back to the negotiation table, similar to how earlier this year when the U.S. was going to have these big tariffs on Canada and Mexico specifically if they didn't, you know, change their policy on immigration. You saw then Prime Minister Trudeau kind of tweak the plan plans to kind of suit what President Trump wanted when it comes to immigration from the northern border. So should Canada, change that tax, this could certainly be seen as a negotiating tactic. At the same time, it could also just be seen as President Trump being a bit impatient with how these trade deals are going and saying, I want to give the tariff rate, establish that with all of these countries anyways. Let's get that done before July 9th.
Yeah, July 9th. And of course, we heard the president today even say that that could be the date. It might
Longer,
not be.
Could be shorter.
Right,
yeah.
It could be shorter. And even in that same press conference, he said, I'd love to be able to just tell these countries, here's the tariff rate, here's what we're charging. And then he actually looked to the side. I think it was Treasury Secretary Bessent that was there with him. And he said, he wouldn't like that so much. Kind of a nod to the fact that even Wall Street investors look at Bessent as sort of the calming force in this. Back to the Canada of it all, though. I mean, you've done a lot of reporting on this. What's so important about our relationship with Canada? Is it the trade? Is it the security? I mean, I know we get a lot of oil from them. How important in terms of that trade relationship is it?
Oil, steel, especially aluminum from Canada, which we have already placed specific tariffs on, but that is core in the relationship between the U.S. and Canada, especially in some of those states in the north, thinking of Michigan, thinking of upper New York, that does a lot of trade, specifically with Canada, or is at least very involved in that, physical aspect of trade. But you've seen President Trump, ever since he took office in the second term, really kind of dismiss the longstanding allyship between the U.S. and Canada. He has floated how Canada could become the 51st state. So, yes, historically, there's an importance in the trading relationship between the U.S. and Canada. With this administration, it doesn't seem like that importance is still there.
Yeah, I'm as you're talking, Aaron, I'm looking at the markets and how they're reacting to this. Because you know me, I'm the business girl. My mind goes, how do investors feel about this? And there's always that visceral reaction. And, we are still on track maybe to reach a high in the S&P 500, but we're starting to pull back. You can see up on your screen that the Dow is still up 0.5%, but you see that slide on the chart, okay, that downward slide. We're still in the green for today. But right around 130, 145, that's when this news broke, and you start to see investors pulling back. Again, we're not falling off a cliff, but this is representative of a fear of, well, if we were going to have a schism in the relationship with our biggest trading partner, or even just higher costs for businesses, because think about it, we don't know what that tariff rate might be, but you have an import tax placed on that. That means that goods are going to be more expensive for businesses. What does that mean when it's an investor? That means that a company's bottom line is going to be impacted. And so, I bring that piece in because I think there's always that other component. It's the security, it's the trade relationship, it's the investors, what it means at home. And so I want to pose the question to you. I mean, you've done a lot of reporting on this as well as inflation. I mean, would there be some inflation concerns coming out of this if we had a tariff? Again, we don't know what the rate is.
Right.
But with China, given that we get so much of our goods from there.
Yeah, I mean, the potential is definitely there. But even just to broaden this out, the threat from President Trump to send this letter to Canada, what does that send to the rest of the countries that are still negotiating with the U.S.? You heard the president also say we might just give you a letter establishing our tariff rate. How does that impact the trade negotiations between the U.S. and the European Union, which we've heard, at least some good signs of in recent weeks? So that could certainly impact the overall tariff rate with countries beyond Canada, which could then impact our inflation rate, which the president has been watching closely ever since, that, quote, Liberation Day, where he introduced these worldwide, quote, reciprocal tariffs.
I'm glad you brought up the point about the negotiations with other countries, because I think that's an important piece of this. This is not just about Canada. We have all of these other nations watching around the world of how these things are unfolding and then likely taking insight of what might be coming for them next. So to that point, I want to ask you about what the big news of the day was when it came to trade before all of this, which was this framework of a deal with China. And just to remind viewers, we had a framework in a meeting in Geneva a few months ago, and then there was this recent meeting of the minds in London, and now it seems today that there is a deal. So expand on that. What do we know, Aaron?
At least I see this as an agreement on the framework that was negotiated in London earlier between U.S. officials and Chinese officials. And some of the top lines from the agreement that we at least know about as of now, the U.S. will be receiving more rare earth materials from China. Since that meeting in London, you've seen U.S. officials voice frustration with the speed at which China is exporting those rare earth materials, which can be used for smartphones, other key electronics. The speed at which that they were getting that to the U.S., it seems that the U.S. and China have come to an agreement for China to speed that up. In return, the U.S. Will not revoke the visas of students from China on American college campuses. They're taking away other countermeasures that have been in place on China. And for both countries, those 100% plus tariffs that they are placing on each other are still not taking effect. It is important to note that this may be just the next step in the process. President Trump, during his press conference earlier today, seemed to indicate that there's something coming down the line in terms of a fuller trade agreement with China. But as far as this week, that seemed to be the big flash surprise announcement that the president made during that event with congressional Republicans at the White House yesterday.
And if history teaches us anything, you go back to 2018, we had a deal with China, then we didn't, then we did. And it ultimately got resolved over a year later. Aaron, thank you so much for hanging out with us on this breaking news and giving your insights today. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Bring in now John Yu, former Deputy Assistant AG. John, thanks for coming on. So let's take a look at the bigger picture when it comes to this case, because this is obviously going to have a ripple effect. The Trump administration has been really frustrated with these nationwide injunctions. There have been 40 of them so far in his second term already. This ruling seems like it has the potential to maybe break the chains off his agenda a little bit here.
I think that's right. This decision frees the Trump administration from having to run at the beck and call of every single district judge in the country, of which there are almost 1,000. And so what's going to happen now is that the Trump administration will have to stop.
Okay, I want to bring you some breaking news that is coming to us from the United States in the last few minutes. President Donald Trump has said that the U.S. is immediately ending trade talks with Canada, and that is in response to the country's digital services tax on U.S. technology companies. So Donald Trump calling the tax a direct and blatant attack. Let's go straight to our White House correspondent, Kimberly Holkert. She is now live for us. So, Kimberly, this news just coming in to us in the last few moments. How much of a surprise is this announcement likely to be?
It is a surprise, given the fact that the Canadian Prime Minister Carney was very, very much involved in reaching out, trying to mend fences over trade disputes with Donald Trump in advance of the G7, which took place in Alberta, Canada. And given the fact that they, in their bilateral meeting there, did leave that meeting, and the readout said that they had promised to, within 30 days of the G7, come to a conclusion on the security as well as trade arrangements between the two countries. But what seems to be angering the U.S. president is the fact that while these discussions were taking place, the Canadian Prime Minister has decided that there will be a digital tax put on the U.S. products operating in Canada and businesses as well. And so as a result, the U.S. president now terminating the discussions with Canada, saying that in the next 7 days, he will arbitrarily, along with his team, put in place a tariff that is yet unknown. We know that when they were first announced earlier this spring, that they were 25% on Canadian goods. But now the U.S. president saying that he will decide within 7 days what that final number will look like. It appears the U.S. president is angry with the Canadian Prime Minister that he has upended the trade discussions before they were complete.
Okay, Kimberly, stay with us, because lots more breaking news coming from the United States today. I want to talk to you about the U.S. Supreme
Tempers
Court's ruling
with
that
Dejanay
curbs judges'
Carrington.
powers to block presidential orders. Now, this follows Donald Trump's executive order, which he signed on the first day of his second term to end birthright citizenship for children of undocumented immigrants. Well, President Trump has hailed this ruling as a giant win. This was him earlier.
Thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there.
Kimberly is still with us. Kimberly, this is a major victory, isn't it, for Donald Trump?
It is a major victory for his agenda, which he's been trying to implement. But he says that 5 liberal jurisdictions in the United States have been responsible for 35 of the 40 rulings that have been issued by federal judges around the country to block his agenda. Those states are California, District of Columbia, which is, of course, not a state, but a district, Massachusetts, Washington State, and the state of Maryland, which is just north of Washington, D.C. And essentially, the argument that the president has been making is that the co-equal branches of government, both the judiciary and the executive, have essentially been sort of eradicated in terms of the power of the executive. In other words, the judiciary, he says, has become an imperial power. And so this ruling by the Supreme Court, he believes, corrects that, making it more of a co-equal arrangement under the U.S. Constitution. Now, just quickly with respect to birthright, the U.S. president in his clip there said that, and he was talking about the 14th Amendment, which created the birthright citizenship. He said it was for the children of slaves, which, of course, when that amendment was created, did not have rights as human beings. And so their children ended up needing to have this mechanism in order to allow for citizenship. And so the U.S. president says that the birthright citizenship, which the United States and only a handful of other countries around the world do, that this was an unintended purpose. And so he's arguing that this will rectify that. So this is a win for him. But what it isn't a win for is the fact that the court still hasn't specifically ruled on the birthright issue. It's only ruled on limiting the president's powers. So he says that he will immediately begin to try and bring back some of these other policies that had also been blocked, including the transgender issue, sanctuary city funding. But again, expect that there will be other angles of litigation that will be taken up on some of these controversial policies, including birthright, which the Attorney General said will be taken up in October.
Okay, many thanks for that. Our White House correspondent Kimberly Holkett there for us.
Some breaking news out of the White House with stocks off session highs. Megan, what's happening?
Hey, Kelly, a new post from the president on Truth Social just now saying that because Canada is moving forward with a digital services tax that will impact American technology companies, he says because of that tax, we are hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada effective immediately. He says we will let Canada know the tariff that they will be paying to do business with the United States of America within the next 7-day period. Now, Kelly, remember, Canada is not facing a July 9th deadline like other countries are. There's a 25% tariff on Canadian imports, but not for any goods that qualify under the USMCA. So it's not as impacted by tariffs right now as many other countries, but now that could change. The president saying, of course, that there could be a new tariff within 7 days on Canada because of this digital services tax.
All right. We'll unpack this a little bit more next hour, I imagine. Megan, for now, thanks. Appreciate it. Megan Casella. Again, markets off the highs. Not a huge reaction just yet, though.
We're following a market that is at record highs right now. Brent, I'll come back to you, and forgive me for interrupting you earlier, but there's a belief, too, that there are not 100% believers in this market yet, and there's a lot
ground. We're dealing with, Mr. Trump's bully instincts. We've seen them in the past. Let's remember, he seems to be complaining about the imposition of the digital services tax. That's been on the books for a long time. It was scheduled to come into effect on July 1st. Maybe he has a rightful grievance about that. But at the same time, we have rightful grievances about his imposition of sector-specific taxes on steel, aluminum, and autos, which are in contravention of the USMCA. And, I think there's a deal to be made there. So I think we stand our ground. We're prepared to negotiate. I expect that the government of Canada
and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's a good-looking group behind me. This group isn't too bad either. Very nice. Nice to be with you. Beautiful, right? Beautiful. Thank you very much. And thank you all for being here to support one of the most important pieces of legislation in the history of our country. And that's everybody saying that, virtually everybody. The one big, beautiful bill to secure our borders, turbocharge our economy, and bring back the American dream. That's what's happening, too. It's met with tremendous approval and reception. And when we were thinking about doing it, we were going to break it down into 3, 4, 5, 6, or even 7 bills. And I said, let's make it one big, beautiful bill, my friend. They actually said it would be very much harder to get this way, but it would be better. And the truth is, I think it worked out well because there's something for everybody, and I think in many ways much better. We're delighted to be joined by Secretaries Marco Rubio, Scott Bessent, Pete Hegseth, Doug Burgum, Doug Collins, Sean Duffy, Howard Lutnick, Linda McMahon, Brooke Rollins, Scott Turner, Chris Wright. Wow, that's a hell of a group. I think that's the biggest group of cabinet members. That's the biggest group of cabinet, and we're not finished yet because we have our great Attorney General Pam Bondi here. U.S. Trade Representative, and he's working around 24 hours. We have them one after another. Countries come. Everybody wants to be with us because we have the hottest country in the world. A year ago, we had a disaster on our hand. We had the coldest country, I think, by far. And now we have the hottest. The King of Saudi Arabia, when I was there, we brought back $5.1 trillion between Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and UAE. And all three said, great leaders, they all said to me the same thing. You know, it's amazing. In 4 months at that time, now it's getting to be close to 6. But in 4 months, they said, you have the hottest country anywhere in the world. It's not even close. And they thought we were dead a year before that. They said, I thought you were dead. The country was dead. And it was pretty close to it. But we have the hottest country in the world, so it's great. And Trade Representative Jamieson Greer is very busy because, where are you, Jamieson? Everybody wants to make a deal and have a part of it, right? I know you and Howard and Scott are working overtime, making deals with other countries. Remember a few months ago, the press was saying, do you really have anybody of any interest? Well, we just signed with China yesterday, right? Just signed with China. We have everybody. We're not going to make deals with everybody. Some we're just going to send them a letter, say, thank you very much. You're going to pay 25, 35, 45%. That's the easy way to do it. And my people don't want to do it that way. They want to do some of it, but they want to make more deals than I would do. But we're having some great deals. We have one coming up, maybe with India, very big one, where we're going to open up India. In the China deal, we're starting to open up China, things that never really could have happened. And the relationship with every country has been very good. And we also have OMB Director, who's very busy also, Russ Vogt. Thank you. Thank you, Russ. And also, I want to give a very special thank you. This is a hell of a group we have here. This is amazing, the quality of people. But actually, I like these people and most of those people much better than the people I just named, okay? But a very special thanks as well to Speaker Mike Johnson, who's a great, legendary guy. He's going to go down as a legend. A great friend of mine, a fantastic Senator, Roger Marshall, wherever you may be, Roger. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bernie Moreno, great win Bernie had in Ohio. Bernie, great win. That was a tough race. They said that was not winnable, and he won by about 5 points, so that was pretty good. So much for not winnable. Mike Lee is here. Mike, hi, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Tim Sheehy, another tremendous win. Way to go, Tim. Young, handsome. That was another race that wasn't supposed to be able to be won. They said, well, we have a very young, handsome guy. I said, does that matter? Looks don't matter, do they, Mike? Looks. Anyway, great job. You can't help it. You can't help it. Great. That was a great race, along with Representatives Paul Gosar, Greg Murphy, Tom Kaine, Jen Kiggins, Rob Bresnahan, who's a, where is Rob? Stand up, Rob. Let me see you. Good. He's done a fantastic job. And Ryan McKenzie. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you all. That's great. It's a big group of people. We're here this afternoon to share the stories of an incredible group of patriots from across the nation whose future we are defending with the one big, beautiful bill. This is the ultimate codification of our agenda to, very simply, a phrase that's been used pretty well by me over the last 10 years, but maybe even before that, make America great again. Very simple, make America great again. When Joe Biden used to get up and say, we will stop this horrible MAGA. We're going to stop MAGA. We're going to fight it. We're going to, I said, Joe, loosen up. It's called Make America Great Again. It's okay. Remember that he got up so angry. He was so angry. He said, make America great again. But we'll deliver a record tax cut, a record spending cut, a record investment in border security. We've done so well on the border. You know, last month, we had 0 people that crossed the border. 0. So Christie and Tom Homan and some of the people, what a job you've done. But, you know, people forget about that. They don't care. The border's been fixed. I wanted to talk about the border 2 days ago at a big group. Sir, they don't want to hear about the border. Why? It's fixed, you know. It's the second time it happened to me. In 2016, I won on the border. I fixed it in about 3 months. It was beautiful. And they wouldn't let me talk about the border. Sir, nobody wants to hear about the border. But we're going to talk about it anyway. Right, Tom Homan? We're talking about it anyway. So we have a big number of dollars that's coming here because we want to keep it that way, and we want to keep it fixed, and a record number of deportations. We're bringing criminals out by the thousands. Nobody can even imagine. They let people in that were murderers, 11,888 murderers, gang members, people from mental institutions, and insane asylum. You know what that is? That's insane asylum. That's a mental institution on steroids. During the campaign, I talk about the late, great Hannibal Lecter. Do you know who that is, Hannibal Lecter? Silence of the Lambs. I'd talk about it, and the fake news would go crazy. Why does he keep mentioning? Well, because we won in a landslide. That's why they don't want to have Hannibal in our midst. And the day I signed this bill into law, almost every major promise made in the 2024 campaign already will have become a promise kept. And that's very important. Promises made, promises kept. And according to the Council of Economic Advisors, these reforms will protect or create more than 7 million jobs, add 3.1% to economic growth, reduce taxes for the typical American by nearly 15%, and increase take-home pay for the normal family of 4 by at least $13,000, and that takes place immediately. That's not bad, right? Look, I'm looking at that guy back there, right? That's pretty good. And if we had a person over at the Fed that would lower interest rates a little bit, that would be helpful too. It's hard to believe. This is on top of, you know, we have to fight this guy. He's not doing the job. Each point that he keeps it up is the equivalent of $300 billion. $300 billion. So if he lowered it to, it would save $600 billion. We have to work hard with cuts on that, right? That's a lot of cutting. And this guy could do it so easily. We don't have inflation. well, we might have inflation. Yeah, and if you do, you raise the rate a little bit. That's okay. But we're going out because Biden gave us a lot of short-term debt. And in giving us short-term debt, he did us no favor. So I think what we'll do is we'll probably just extend the short-term debt and then go out, because I don't want to tie it up for 10 or 15 years at a high rate. But every point is it's really more, is $300 billion. So if we got it down to 1%, we're talking about almost $1 trillion in saving just with the stroke of a pen. No work, no missing anything, just like an accounting situation. Oh, Doug Collins, I just see Doug. Did I mention you, Doug? I don't think so. I'm glad I saw you. I'm glad that somebody's going to be in big trouble with you. They didn't write your name down, Doug. Somebody's in, I got you. So we think of that, though. We save, and all you have to do, it's so simple. I'm explaining to this guy, and Biden extended him. That wasn't good. I'm explaining to him, you can do so much for our country. You could save $1 trillion just with a stroke of a pen. Just the utterance of a sentence that we're going to be cutting. It's a shame. It's a shame. We're one of the highest. We should be the lowest. You know, we're the United States of America. We'd have money coming in like at levels that they have never seen. I got a call the other day from the people in Congress because we're doing our bill. I didn't even tell you this, Mike, and they called. They said, there's something wrong with the numbers, sir. I said, what's wrong? I don't know. They're not balancing out. There's something really wrong. I said, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, we don't know. I said, what's the problem? We're taking in much more money than we have scheduled. I said, so far, that sounds good. They said, how much is it? About $80 billion. I said, do me a favor, check the tariff line. They called me back an hour later. Sir, we've taken in $88 billion in tariffs. Isn't that a beautiful thing? $88 billion. I thought I'd tell these little stories. Go off script and tell these little stories, Scott, right? Because it does make it a little more interesting. Although my speechwriters have just gotten every award in the book. Vince, where are you, Vince? Good. Where are we? Where's Ross? He's gotten all these awards, and I'm going off the record all the time. Where is he? He didn't show up to the speech. He wrote the speech. He didn't show. Well, that means he has confidence in me. According to the Council of Economic Advisors, these reforms will protect or create more than 7 million jobs, add 3.1% to economic growth, reduce taxes for the typical American by nearly 15%, and increase take-home pay for a normal family by an incredible $13,000. All of these things are happening. And by the way, there's no inflation. All of the numbers I gave you, all of the money that's coming in, and maybe more importantly than the billions of dollars we're taking in with tariffs, is the fact that we've got hundreds of plants going up all over the United States that never would have been here. I was with Howard and Scott and Texas Instruments the other day, and the head of Texas Instruments, they're going to spend $60 billion in the United States. And he said, sir, please don't do it to me. And I looked at him, I knew exactly what he meant. He said, you mean tariffs, right? He said, that's right. If you ever get rid of those tariffs, you've cost me a fortune. They're all coming in because they don't want to pay the tariffs, and they're coming in at levels, and it only works for the United States because it doesn't work for other countries, but it works for us. We have a record investment. We have records and everything, and when these places open up, that's bigger than the $15 trillion that I'm talking about. You know, you don't see it right away. But bigger is the fact that they're all coming in, they're building their factories, the AI factories and the auto plants. We have auto plants, they're closing up in other countries. I don't want to specifically name the countries, but you know who they are. And they're coming into the U.S. and they're opening up and building like nobody's ever seen anything like it. I don't call it a miracle, I call it, this should have been done 40 years ago. We would have never lost our auto. We lost 50% of our auto industry to China, Mexico, Canada, and various other countries. Should have never happened if you had a president that said, we're going to charge you tariffs. You're not going to build next to us. Send it in and take away our jobs. It's going well. Did everybody have a good time? Reasonable. How about you? I did. I always have a good time. Hello. Hi, Jennifer.
You just posted right before we took off that you're not leaving because of a ceasefire. Why are you? Can you elaborate?
We're looking at better than ceasefire. We're not looking for a ceasefire. I didn't say I was looking for a ceasefire. That was Emmanuel, nice guy, but he doesn't get it right too often. But we're not looking. We're a ceasefire.
You're looking to get into this more. You're not going to involve the U.S. in this conflict at this stage. You're going to do anything more for Israel right now?
First, I want to talk President Donald Trump saying that he...
Remember, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. We don't have to go too deep into it. They just can't have a nuclear weapon.
What was the thinking on the call for Tehran to evacuate? Is there a threat or is there incoming? What was the thinking on the full evacuation?
I want people to be safe. And that's always possible. A thing like that could happen. I just want people to be safe.
Is there any new concern about U.S. troops or assets in the region at all today?
We have great people. They know how to protect themselves.
And when you say better, what specifically do you mean?
So hard if they do anything to our people. We'll come down so hard, then the gloves are off so beautifully. Now, I think they know not to touch our troops.
Are you sending the vice?
Yeah, but our troops are ready.
Do you want to send the vice president and Steve Witkoff? There's reports that you want to send the vice president and Steve Witkoff to meet with the Iranians and have discussions. Is that something you're considering?
Not sure yet. I may. Depends on what happens when I get back.
What specifically is better than a ceasefire? What are you looking for here?
A real end, not a ceasefire. An end.
So something that will be permanent.
Yeah. Or giving up entirely. That's okay too.
Are you close there? Is that possible in the next 24 or 48 hours?
It's certainly possible. A complete give up. That's possible, yeah.
Has the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense drawn up plans for you if Iran were to attack U.S. bases or do any damage to U.S. bases?
I just can't tell you.
Can I ask you, because there's been some skepticism, is there any guarantee that if the U.S. did get involved militarily, that a U.S. bomb could destroy Iran's nuclear program and facilities?
Everything or anything or life, you know that. Look at you, right? There's no guarantee. But you're saying a guarantee on what?
Do you think if the U.S. got involved militarily, it would actually wipe out Iran's nuclear program? Or where's your assessment of that?
I hope their program's going to be wiped out long before that. But they're not going to have a nuclear weapon.
What you're doing for BBs, do you have any reason to believe the Israelis are going to slow down, or are they going to hit the accelerator right now because they've got superiority?
Over the next 2 days, right? You're going to find out.
Has the Gang of Eight...
Nobody's slowed up so far.
Has the Gang of Eight been notified about what's coming in the next couple days?
We'll be talking to them.
What can you do?
It's not necessary.
What can you do in Washington that you couldn't do in Canada?
Just be a little bit, I think, more well-versed. Not having to use telephones so much because I don't believe in telephones. These people like you listen to them, you know. So being on the scene is much better. And we did everything I had to do in the G7. We had a good G7. We signed the deal with the European Union, phase one of a deal, but we signed the deal with the UK. And the UK is really great. We're very far down the line with a lot of deals. I mean, look, we're actually finished with every deal if you really think about it, because all I have to do is say this is what you're going to pay. But it's nice to be nice.
Did Secretary Bessent stay behind as your representative? Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, a couple of people.
Can I ask you, where...
Here we go. Who else has a question other than CNN?
Mr. President, you talked about the European Union. Can you tell us what the status is on talks on those you signed with the UK today?
I don't feel that they're offering a fair deal yet. You know, they've been very tough over the years. If you look at European Union, they formed in order to hurt the United States on trade. And we're either going to make a good deal or they'll just pay whatever we say to them to pay.
What about the Japanese? So you met briefly with Prime Minister Abe?
Conversation. I thought he was terrific, actually. You know, I was very friendly with Shinzo Abe, Prime Minister. He was a great man. But I think he's going to do a very good job.
You think you have a chance of a deal there?
They're tough. Japanese are tough. But ultimately, you have to understand, we're just going to send a letter and say this is what you're going to pay. Otherwise, you don't have to do business with us. But there's a chance of a deal.
They want changes to the auto tariffs as well. Is that on the table?
Anything else?
The drone attack in Kyiv. What's your response to that? It looks like 14 or so, a drone attack, a Russian drone attack in Kyiv. Very recently. It seems 14 civilians, an apartment building.
statement on the Middle East. What changed about that convinced you to sign on to it?
Well, I haven't seen the statement yet, but I authorized them to say certain things. I don't know whether or not they said them correctly, but I think they probably did. We had a good meeting. I think that Canadian representatives were very good. He did a very good job.
How are the trade? How was your meeting with him? How are the trade talks with you?
I think we had a lot of good talks with a lot of people.
You said he's looking for something more complex. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
Complex on the deals and they never get done. And we need speed. You know, we're dealing with really, if you think about it, probably 175 countries. And most of them are going to just be sent a letter saying, I'm not allowed, it's going to be an honor to trade with you, and here's what you're going to have to pay us. We're making a lot of money. You know, we took in $88 billion in tariffs. And I was called by Congress about 2 nights ago saying, we don't understand, the numbers are so far off. And I said, is that good or bad? He said, well, we're taking in so much more income than we thought. We've never seen anything.
Yes. Mr. President, since we know in July or in the future both President of Rwanda and the Congo will be coming to the United States, in Africa, President Jean Lorenzo, the president of Angola, he is also the leader of African Union.
Good.
He
Yes, I know.
worked very hard to bring peace, but unfortunately...
Let's get him here.
Yes, that's
okay?
right.
Would you invite him for me?
Of course.
Okay? No, we'll have. I know that he works very hard, and he's the head of essentially the union. So the union all over Africa, not the kind of union that we have. This is the union all over Africa, and I'd love to have him, so you'll let him know.
Of course,
Okay?
Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now you go back to where you belong, right? That's great. That was a great job. It's real knowledge and real heart, too. Congratulations. Okay. So we're here today to celebrate a glorious triumph, and that's what it is, for the cause of peace. And this is a long time waiting. The signing of a historic peace agreement between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the Republic of Rwanda. The conflict has continued, and it's been going on for many, many years. It's been going from, I guess they say 30 years. The Great Lakes region of Africa for a long time, and maybe even time before that. How is the Great Lakes region? Must be beautiful, right? Beautiful. Beautiful region, but they had a lot of war, right? A lot of fighting, a lot of death. It's displaced countless people and claimed the lives of thousands and thousands. But today, the violence and destruction comes to an end, and the entire region begins a new chapter of hope and opportunity, harmony, prosperity, and peace. That's been a long time waiting. I said, how long has the war been going? And a friend of mine who was very much involved said 30 years, and at least 6 million people were killed during that period of time. It's incredible. And somebody said that was actually, it's the biggest war on the planet since World War II. So it's a shame, but we're going to bring it to an end. I want to express my gratitude and congratulations to the representatives of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the Republic of Rwanda, who signed this pivotal agreement a short time ago. They just signed right in front. And let me also thank Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who has worked very hard on this subject, and we've worked on it together, for his outstanding leadership, as well as Senior Advisor for African and Africa Affairs, Mossad Boulos, who's, as you know, spends a lot of his time in Africa, and he's very comfortable there. I said, were you at all uncomfortable with all of the turmoil and all of the killing? And he said, no, I wasn't uncomfortable, and that's what you need. You need somebody that's going to be able to get. So, Mossad, I want to thank you very much for the job you've done. Amazing guy, actually. I also want to thank African Union, Qatar, Togo, for working closely with the United States. And I know Qatar was really working hard. And African Union, we just spoke about that. And I look forward to having them representatives here when we do the official meeting, and that'll be sometime in July. And we look forward to it. And you better be here covering it, okay? You better. We're not going to stand anybody else covering it but you. But this is a tremendous breakthrough. In a few short months, we've now achieved peace between India and Pakistan, Israel and Iran, and the DRC and Rwanda. and a couple of others also. Serbia, you know, was they were getting ready to go to war with a group I won't even mention because it didn't happen. We were able to stop it, but I have a friend in Serbia, and they said we're going to go to war again, and I won't mention that it's Kosovo, but it's Kosovo. But they were going to have a big time war, and we stopped it. We stopped it because of trade. They want to trade with the United States. I said we don't trade with people that go to war. And we said that also with, if you take a look at Pakistan and India, it was great. They have two great leaders, and they were able to stop. They were in the midst of a big fight, I guess everybody saw, and it was going to get very bad. And they are nuclear nations, very powerful nuclear nations. In the months and years ahead, my administration will continue to work closely with all of the parties in this deal and ensure the agreements are fully taken care of, and you're going to do what's in the agreement. We'll say you better do what's in that agreement, right? Because if somebody fails to do that, bad things happen. But I have a feeling that after 30 years, I think after 30 years you're all set. I think both of you have said that's enough, right? That's enough. Yeah. That's enough. You've seen it all. So this is a wonderful day. It's a great day. We've had some tremendous success. It's been a great week between just coming back from a very successful trip. NATO's really pulled together. They have. They're going to spend over $1 trillion a year. Nobody expected a thing like that to happen. And we had the war, as you know. We call it the 12-day war. It was exactly a 12-day war, and we ended up with no nuclear weapons. That's what we wanted. They were just absolutely blown to pieces, those 3 sites. And there's no nuclear weapons, and hopefully there can be a lot of healing, and the healing is starting. And it's been a really pretty amazing week, and this is one that I really look forward to. This was set up a few weeks ago, and it was something that I really look forward to. If we can do this, and we do that because we have a certain competence that's good, we're able to get people to be peaceful. I think we can do war better than anybody, but we don't want to. And we have the greatest military in the world. They showed that in Iran. Those pilots, they flew for 36 hours. And think of that, and they hit their target. The size of this desk, half the size of this desk, from about 52,000 feet in the dark of night with no moon, 0 moon. They wanted it that way. Can you believe it? And they hit, every missile hit exactly half the size of this beautiful Resolute desk. We don't want to talk about it when it comes to rockets hitting it, but half the size of this, and they hit dead center from tremendous heights, going at tremendous speeds. It's amazing. Nobody could do a thing like that. Nobody has that weaponry, and nobody could do a thing like that. So we had a very busy and successful week. And in addition to that, our economy is doing great, setting records with the economy, and a lot of other good things happening. But this is about Congo and Rwanda. And I'd like to ask, if I might, would you say a few words before we introduce our guests, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes.
So, under your leadership, Mr. President, and the full support of Secretary Rubio and the entire team at the State Department, we engaged with the 2 parties in early April. And within 3 weeks, they signed the Declaration of Principles. And now, within about 2 months from that, we have signed today the final, this is actually the final peace agreement. You know, many people were wondering if this is preliminary. No, this is the actual final peace agreement that they've signed today. You've also expressed interest in inviting the heads of states to the White House for a signing ceremony. So there will be some other additional agreements that will be signed. In addition to this, which will become known as the Washington Accord with regards to the Great Lakes region.
That's great.
There are some economic...
Why not the Trump Accord? I'm only kidding. It'll be headlines. No, I think that's a great name, Washington Accord. Beautiful.
And there's an economic aspect as well that is extremely important for both countries. They have also worked, last week we finalized the regional economic integration framework, which both countries will be signing at the White House here during that ceremony. And
that's going to be a great ceremony.
Absolutely.
Right? We're going to make that a great ceremony and bring other people. that were involved, some other people, besides the gentleman we talked about who we know has worked so hard. If you think there are other people that are deserving, let us know. Okay?
Sure.
And there will be some bilateral agreements. We're negotiating a minerals deal with the DRC for critical minerals. Many American companies have shown interest in investing in the DRC, and these we're talking about long-term investments. Same thing with Rwanda. Many American companies have shown interest, and not only in mining, but also in the midstream and downstream, which will be the processing of minerals. We're also working and supporting the Lobito corridor, which will help building the infrastructure. Just 2 days ago, the United States signed, and supported a project of $1.5 billion for electric transmission from Angola to the DRC. And there are many other projects of that nature lined up. So we will be, under your leadership, Mr. President, will be working with the two countries very closely and with the support of Qatar to make sure that this agreement is implemented.
And a lot of our companies are in both of these countries now, especially since we've been getting along so well. It's probably the way we were brought together, and we have a lot of our big companies are there between rare earth and all of the other things that they do in Africa, which is very greatly expanding, especially in these two countries. You have earth, they consider it to be about the best in the world, actually, I've heard. So we're doing a lot of different things, and it's all going to bring everybody together. That's how this all began, I guess. But the big thing is, the big thing for me is there's really only one thing, and that's getting a peace treaty with two countries that have been fighting for 30 years. And I want to thank you all. Will, if you could,
yes, sir.
You could bring the letters over.
Of course, sir. So in front of you, as you said, sir, these are the actual agreements that were signed respectively by the foreign ministers of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda earlier today, witnessed by Secretary Rubio. We've also prepared for you two letters. This is to President Paul Kagame of Rwanda, expressing your appreciation and congratulations for everything that's happened already, and of course inviting him to Washington for, as Dr. Bula said, what we hope will be the Washington Accords, finally setting the terms for peace and prosperity in this region, hopefully for a very long time.
That's great. That's beautiful. Very important. We're going to put a picture in there, right? As soon as this is over, they're going to put, we have a fast-moving photographer, Dan, who's going to put a nice picture of us here. Okay. That's for you.
And this is a letter to President Chikisade of the Democratic Republic of Congo, again congratulating him on settling this long-running war and inviting him to Washington, D.C. for the final conclusion of the agreement, hopefully soon.
That's great. That's right. That's great. You take that pen, and you take that pen.
Thank you very much.
So I'd like to ask JD to say a few words, our great Vice President, and then Marco, and go ahead.
Great. Well, first, let me welcome the foreign ministers of Rwanda and Congo. It's great to have you in the Oval Office. And second, let me say congratulations to the President, Secretary Rubio, and the entire team. I think for the people of these two countries, they should know that the United States is committed to the pathway of peace. But to my fellow Americans, this is really a celebratory moment. This is a big moment for our country because under the President's leadership, we've taken what was 30 years of killing and war, the worst war in terms of death count since World War II, and now we're on a pathway to peace. And so if I think about what I know about these two countries, for 30 years, pretty much the entire time that I can remember these two countries being in the news, much of the story has been about them fighting one another, about them killing one another. And now we can look forward to a future where my children will look at this moment as the beginning of a story of prosperity and of peace. So thanks to the President, congratulations to the entire team, and to my fellow Americans. We should all be really proud because it's amazing what active presidential leadership can accomplish when it's geared towards peace and prosperity, and that's what we have in the Oval Office right now. So great job, sir.
Thank you very much, JD and Marco, and then we're going to ask the two principals to speak.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, first of all, thank you. When I first came on this job a few months ago, you made it very clear that the priority of this administration under your leadership is going to be the pursuit of peace. And from day one, whether it's been in Ukraine and Russia, whether it's been Pakistan, India, whether it's been Iran and Israel, and in the continent of Africa, your priority's been on peace. And today we see this come to fruition. It's sad. Wars get a lot more attention than peace. But peace is harder than war, a lot harder. And I want to congratulate both of the leaders here and their respective presidents for choosing the harder path, which is often peace, than the easier path, which sometimes is war, as costly and as bloody as it may be. And I echo the Vice President's statements, and that is that Americans should be very proud that the #1 voice for peace in the world today is our president, your president. And so thank you, President Trump. And I want to, again, recognize Dr. Boulos and the work he's put into this from day one. He's really put a lot of time and effort, and as our friends from the respective countries can share with us. And last point, I do want to thank, you've done this already, but the African Union, Togo, and Qatar, who have been extraordinary partners and whose help we're going to need to continue to receive in order to bring all this to fruition. So congratulations to both of you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Great job you've done. Do you want to start? Either way. Would you like to start?
Ladies first, maybe.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for having us here. I think I can summarize my contribution in 3 main points. First of all, thank you and congratulations indeed for this remarkable milestone, which is putting an end to 30 years of conflict and of suffering, and which is redefining the perspectives that millions of Congolese and of citizens of the greater Great Lakes region will have. The second point is stay committed, stay on board. We need the United States to make sure that this agreement holds and that you hold us accountable. And the third point is, if you stay on board, I think there are so many perspectives that we can transform our partnerships through and that can usher in an era of prosperity, of growth, and of shared bilateral relationships that go well beyond the challenges that we've shared together, and that can at least, or finally, focus on the potential and of the wealth that we can share. So again, our heartfelt gratitude to you on my behalf, but more importantly, on behalf of the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Thank you so much.
Beautifully spoken, and I look forward to seeing your leader. A highly respected person, as you know,
Indeed.
highly respected all over the world, but in Africa in particular. So sometime in July we'll do something, big ceremony.
We look forward to it.
Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is indeed a historical day because it's the signing of a peace agreement between Congo and Rwanda to end a conflict that has been going on for 30 years. And there has been many mediation, facilitation in the past, but none of them succeeded. And we believe that it's because of your leadership and your steadfast commitment to this process, with also a new approach of economic integration, regional economic integration, which is important to allow Rwanda and DRC working together, because this is a very rich region with cross-border trade, with minerals, with natural wealth. So with the U.S. Standing side by side with Rwanda and DRC, we believe that we will achieve a long-time peace. And we also believe that, as my colleague from DRC stated, it's important for the United States to stay committed, because today we signed, but now we need to implement what we have signed in order to open this new era you were talking about of prosperity, so that we can reap the economic dividend of peace. So for this economic integration framework to be implemented, it's important for the U.S. to accompany the parties to implement what we have signed, because in the past we have signed so many agreements that were not implemented. And we are really, we believe that with your leadership, with the involvement of the United States administration, we will reach that goal. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
Well, this will happen, definitely. I can reach over. Do you want to just press them over to me? Let me have them. And I just wanted to give you each. These are your signed agreements. And we'll make sure that you follow through. We'll make sure you follow through. Yeah. We'll make sure that you follow through. Okay, that's for you. And we have one other thing that we're going to give, that we give to special people only. It's a coin. Thank you. And I hope you do that. I'm going to give you a second one for your leader.
Oh, thank you very much.
These are serious coins. You don't want to You don't want to lose them. You'll be very. I think that your reporter from Africa should get one. What do you think? Is she around? I think yes. Are the reporters okay with it? Brian, yes. Darling, that's for you. Okay. You did a fantastic job.
Thank you,
And I heard you
President.
do a great job in covering everything. Thank you.
And Mr. President, we actually have the pictures that you took earlier
Oh,
with
let
the
me
foreign
see that.
ministers here already.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you.
Let me see that.
They're in this folder right here, sir.
Okay, this one?
Yes, sir.
Oh, they look better than me. I don't like it. I don't like it. That's beautiful. That's very good. We have a good photographer. Beautiful. That's great. You better, I'll tell you, you better do the job here. We're going to come down. It's beautiful. Thank you very much. So we'll put them in. That's for you.
I can do that.
That's for you.
There it is.
This is for the Congo.
And what is it?
For the Congo.
Yes. Okay. Let's see, we have two of them, I think so. You wouldn't give us one, you would have made a big mistake. Isn't that nice? That's for you. That's for you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. And you're all set, and this is for you. You're going to get this. Good. Might as well hold it.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? No, not Canada. This is about Canada.
Why not? Why not
This
Canada,
is
by the way?
about- Why?
I mean,
Because this is about a different subject.
but
right
you're
now.
ending all.
This is right now actually a much more important subject. We just ended a war that was going on for 30 years where 6 million people died. So don't ask me a trade question on Canada.
Mr. President, Kara Castanova from Lindell TV. Now that your administration, and congratulations, has secured peace in Africa to a bloody, horrific war that's gone on for decades and no other president could do it, do you think the mainstream media will
I
finally...
love her, I'm telling you. No other, but you're right, no other president could do it. They tried and they didn't even try, I don't think. I actually don't think they tried. Do you think Biden tried? He didn't know he was alive.
Do you think the
Go
mainstream
ahead.
media will finally give you credit where credit is due?
No, the media will never give me credit. But the people give me credit, that's why I'm here. The people didn't give me, that's why we're here in a landslide. We got all 7 states, we won the popular vote. So the media won't give me credit, but the people give me credit. That's more important to me.
You're going to go down as a peacemaker. You're also going to go down with the president who had 0 border crossings in May. You secured the border most than anybody has ever done. But I don't know if you know this. You're on track right now to have the lowest murder rate in history in this country, and I think largely go to the fact we closed down the border. But do you want to comment on that? You might go down as the lowest murder rate in U.S. history, President Trump.
I saw that the other day, and that's an honor. I mean, and that's really even better because, you know, we've taken a lot of illegals into the country through the Biden administration that are murderers, 11,888 to be exact. And many of them are now gone. We got rid of them. They're back where they belong. But so it's a great honor. You know, if you took that out, the numbers would be even better. They've created a lot of problems.
You truth socialed earlier about getting money to the air traffic controllers and the big, beautiful bill, which hopefully, praise God, we get this thing signed. What does that mean to that industry that have been suffering the last couple of years, probably a decade of being underfunding, and how that changed the safety of air travel?
Well, they've underfunded the airports for years, and I started the process of getting it completed in terms of the equipment necessary to land the planes, where the planes, like the helicopter accident with the plane, would have never happened if they had the right modern equipment. It would have been bells and whistles would have been going on all over the place. And I had that all set, but when I wasn't here, they totally dropped it. You had a terrible head of transportation. We have a very good one there, Sean Duffy. But you had Buttigieg, and he didn't know a damn thing. He'd ride to work on his bicycle. He didn't know what the hell was going on. He was terrible. So he totally dropped that. It was a project that should have happened, and I was all set. But we had a very sad experience with the voting, and so we didn't get to do that. But now I'm doing it, and we're going to have a great system. And it's funded partially by the bill. It's the initial funding is by the bill, and then it gets to be funded. The rest of it comes a little bit later as we build it out.
but we're going to build out the best in the world. We have the best companies in the world. A couple of countries have very good systems. In fact, I noticed when I was landing, my pilot often would use the system of another country, and I said, what are you doing that for? He said, the United States system is so bad. So we have the best companies that do that in the world bidding. You have Raytheon, you have IBM, you have a lot of different companies bidding, and we'll get the best one, the best system, for the best price. And they're going to go to town and give us a system that will be better than any other system in the world. And you won't have planes bunking into each other at 35,000 feet.
On the subject of peace deals, how close are you and your administration to a deal in terms of Gaza ceasefire right now?
Often asked, and I think it's close. I just spoke with some of the people involved. It's a terrible situation that's going Gaza. He's asking about, and we think within the next week we're going to get a ceasefire. And we're supplying, as you know, a lot of money and a lot of food to that area because we have to. I mean, you have to. We're in theory not involved in it, but we're involved because people are dying. And I look at those crowds of people that have no food, no anything, and you know we're the ones that are getting it there. Some of it's being taken by some bad people. You know, if you give it and you give it out, and they're supposed to be taking care of the people, and they end up stealing the food and selling it. But we have a pretty good system now. But so we're helping with that. You see the lines of people that just get one meal essentially. But it's too bad other countries aren't helping out. Nobody's helping out. We're doing that because I think we have to on a humanitarian basis. Like this, we didn't have to get involved in Africa, but we did because we thought it was. I mean, I've been reading, like J.D. said, he's, you know, from much of his life, he's been just seeing this about this brutal war, and it actually got a lot of publicity because of the level of brutality. Right? It was nobody's ever seen anything like it, and to be involved in that, I mean, I consider this the most important of my conferences today. We just had a great Supreme Court victory today, and everybody would say that was big, but you know, we're talking about saving thousands and probably millions of lives here. This is more important than anything. So it's great, but we're working on Gaza, trying to get it taken care of. And again, you know, a lot of food has been sent there, and other countries throughout the world should be helping also.
And on another conflict that I know you've been working on, sir, is it true that you have reached out with a letter to North Korea's Kim Jong-un?
Well, if there is a conflict, I get along with him very, very well, and we'll get the conflict solved with North Korea. I've had a good relationship with Kim Jong-un, and I've gotten along with him really great, so we'll see what happens. But somebody's saying there's a potential conflict. I think we'll work it out if there is. It wouldn't involve us, but again, we're very far away from a lot of these places that we're solving problems with. But I enjoy doing it, I like doing it, and it's the right thing to do, and we have an ability to get it done, so we're solving things that we didn't have a lot to do. Serbia, Kosovo, I told you, we solved a potential disaster. I can tell you that some of the countries that you're not going to hear about, but some countries that were ready to go to war with their neighbor are not going to go to war with their neighbor, and that's a great thing. We have a number of them. But I'm very happy about India and Pakistan because they actually have nuclear weapons. You know, when you talk about Iran, they were trying to get it, but India has nuclear weapons. Pakistan has nuclear weapons, high-level nuclear weapons both, and getting that solved was really great. We did it through trade, so it was a great thing.
Mr. President, when it comes to nuclear weapons, Mr. President, are you concerned that the Iranians may have some enriched uranium at Pickaxe Mountain?
The last thing they're thinking about right now is enriched uranium. They're not thinking about what they want to do is they want to get back to life, and they do want to meet me, and we'll do that quickly. We're going to do it quickly. We'll have a meeting.
This morning that they don't want to meet with the U.S. Were they telling you something different in private?
They may say that to you. Don't you think they want to meet me? Don't you think we have sanctions on there that they can't do anything? Wouldn't you think that they want to meet me? I mean, they're not stupid people, but they went through a lot, and they suffered, and so did Israel. Israel suffered greatly. It was a nasty 12 days, And, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Are you considering sending Patriot missiles to Ukraine? Have you made up your mind about that yet?
Go ahead.
On this conflict, Mr. President, there are a few unanswered questions that remain in this deal. For example, will Rwandan on this conflict? For example, will Rwandan troops pull back from parts of DR Congo, and also will the M23 rebel group be allowed to remain in parts of eastern DR Congo? Do you have any answer to those questions?
Let me ask you that question. You want to answer that one? It sounds like an interesting question for you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. In the agreement we signed, we have taken the concept of operation for the neutralization of the FDLR, which is a vicious genocidal movement, and the lifting of Rwandan defensive measures. So this was already signed last year in November, so we will implement it. This concept of operation to do both things, to neutralize this movement, which has been destabilizing Rwanda for many years, and to lift our defensive measures. As for the M23, in the agreement also, we have decided to rely on the Doha talks, because there are currently talks between the AFC M23 and the DRC government to have a peace deal also that will complement the Washington peace agreement. So both things are taken care of.
Thank you. Mr. President, will the United States be enforcing this agreement or taking a
We'll
role
be
in it?
working with them to get it enforced. They can enforce their own agreement, but we'll be putting a lot of pressure on to make sure it gets enforced. The two people in this room are very, very capable people, and they'll get it done. I think they'll get it done. They love their. One thing I learned very quickly is how much you love your country and you want to get it done. And they know it has to get done, otherwise bad things happen. But I think we're well beyond that. Other presidents should have done what I'm doing right now. They never did it. I don't think they ever tried. I don't think it's like they couldn't do it. I don't think they ever tried. And if they did, they wouldn't be able to do it anyway.
On the
President,
yes, thank you. Mr. President, can you share with us what can happen if one of the parts violate this peace agreement? Because we don't want war to come back to DRC.
I'd rather not say. I would just say that there are big penalties if they violate, and they're not going to. I don't think they will violate. I think they mean it, but we have very severe penalties, financial and otherwise. Okay.
Mr. President, we can circle back to your Truth Social post on Canada specifically. Why are you deciding to end trade talks with Canada, and what rate are you looking to set?
So Canada put a charge on some of our companies, and Canada's been a very difficult country to deal with over the years. We hear Canada, we have a great relationship with the people of Canada, but it's been very difficult, and they put a charge, and they were a little bit early, we found out about it. So, and we have all the cards, we have every single one. We don't want to do anything bad, but they have, economically, we have such power over Canada. I'd rather not use it, but they did something with our tech companies today trying to copy Europe. They copied Europe. It's not going to work out well for Europe either, and it's not going to work out well for Canada. They were foolish to do it. So I said we're going to stop all negotiations with Canada right now until they straighten out their act. Okay?
Is there anything Canada can do to change your mind about this situation?
Well, no, they put a tax on companies that were American companies that they shouldn't. Very severe tax. And, yeah, I guess they could remove it. They will, but it doesn't matter to me. We have all the cards. We have all the cards. We do a lot of business with Canada, but relatively little. They do most of their businesses with us. And when you have that circumstance, you treat people better. They've had farmers that are getting like 300, 400, 200% in tariffs. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We have cases, you don't read this and the people don't report, but they charge us 400% on some dairy products. 400%. Nobody writes that. It's not fair to our farmers, and we've got to protect our farmers.
Mr. President, you mentioned how much of a rate cut it would do to the interest on the debt. Earlier today, Director Pulte was on CNBC talking about how he suggested Powell should resign. Any comments on whether or not Powell should step down? I know you've been pretty critical.
I don't have a comment. I'd love him to resign if he wanted to. He's done a lousy job. Look, if you were there, you'd say, well, the United States is doing well. They have no inflation. And if they do get inflation in a year or two, we'll start raising the rates. We'll get rid of the inflation, and do other things. Biden had the worst inflation in the history of our country. 19%, but I think it was much higher than that.